I'll bring in Denis MacShane, former British Minister of European Affairs. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. Now, the two sides seem to be on the brink of striking this new deal. What changes can we expect to the Northern Ireland Protocol which will make it more palatable?
That's a very good question. Everybody wants to see the text. I mean, basically, the main Protestant party in Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionist Party, just don't like the deal. They don't like the European Union. They're big supporters of hard Brexit. They don't like Dublin, and they don't like having to alter the way Northern Ireland is perceived, being in the single market, in part of the European Union, as well as being inside the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So it hangs on them, but I think people have got to the watershed moment ready to say, that's enough to the DUP. You've been jerking everybody in London, Westminster around now since 2017. We want to move on. The nation, the entire nation of the United Kingdom of Northern Ireland want to move on and go back. It only means going back to the withdrawal agreement and the Brexit withdrawal trade and cooperation partnership. It's not anything new on the table. It won't help British firms get more markets in Europe or allow Europeans to come and work freely in Britain, but it does remove the ideological obsession of some people in British politics with trying to do down the European Union even after Brexit.
Is it just going to be the DUP that's going to put up potential roadblocks, or can we expect, members of the Tory party like Boris Johnson to start pulling this deal apart, whatever happens?
It's up to him. I mean, Boris Johnson, to put it mildly, has been making it very clear he wants to be the Donald Trump of British politics. He wants to come back as Prime Minister and boot out Rishi Sunak. And he's using this as a way of doing so. But the sense in the comms, it's very difficult to read it if you're not there, and it can change from hour to hour, is that the majority of the Conservative MPs, backed by everybody in all the other parties, the Labour Party, the Scottish Nationalists, the Liberals, want this now to end. Enough games playing by the ultra anti-Europeans. We've got terrible economic problems. Poland is likely to overtake Britain in terms of economic growth and economic wealth in the next 10 years, unless the British economy starts to move forward again. So Tory party have got to face very tricky local elections in May. They won't want to voters. Voters in England are sick and tired of these antics, and I think Rishi Sunak, looking at the election next year, knows if he can pull off a deal now, if he can offer this, even if there'll be complaints and moans and whines and groans, the fact is we're not going to start undoing the Brexit deal just to satisfy a few very hard-line people in Northern Ireland.
Given that, as you mentioned, so many things are going wrong in the United Kingdom, will there be pressure on politicians like Boris Johnson to, as you said, get Brexit done, something he campaigned on and promised, given that we've seen inflation at 10%, we've seen now limits that supermarkets are imposing on fruits and vegetables. I know the British government says this is due to severe weather in parts of Spain, but surely it's more than that, because supermarkets in France, I can tell you, are not imposing limits on fruits and vegetables.
No, this is part of the big problem in English political discourse on the BBC and obviously on the part of politicians, and all politicians, not just the Conservative governing party. That is, we know that a thought of Brexit was done by Boris Johnson, but it's turned to ashes in his mouth. There are so many difficulties. You have to pay £400 now, that's €500, to take your dog on holiday into Europe. Young artists can't go and perform in Europe. Lloyd's, the giant insurance company, has to set up an office in Brussels, employing 300 top insurance professionals, paying tax to the Belgian government, because they can't operate out of London. And more, we've had big opinion polls showing that in all but 3 of the 650 constituencies in Britain, all but 3, People are saying it was a mistake. The vote of 2016 was a mistake. And it can't be undone any more than France could undo a referendum on a constitutional treaty 20 years ago. But people don't want to keep bickering and fighting ideologically. Business doesn't want to do it. The Labour Party's coming up with interesting ideas. And if Rishi Sunak, he's a pragmatic banker. He doesn't understand politics. He doesn't do British politics very well. But he's a man who likes to make money, and he can see that Britain has stopped making money since the Boris Johnson hard Brexit was imposed. Getting out of that quagmire and growing again is his challenge if he wants to win the election next year.
Given that, as you said, Rishi Sunak does see the benefits of having some sort of relationship with the European Union. Going forward, could we potentially see in the years to come the United Kingdom being part of some, like a Norwegian model within the EU or potentially something more?
Let's discuss the Norwegian model, the Swiss model, but both of those are predicated on accepting the full rules of the single market, and most sensitive of all is allowing free movement of labour. 27% of the Swiss population, for example, was born in the EU. It's not a problem for the Swiss because they like those workers. They like them in the construction industry and healthcare and restaurants and agriculture and tourism above all. But in this country, you have somebody with a foreign accent speaking, and there are just the Conservative Party saying, you're letting immigrants in, you're letting immigrants take over Britain. That was always one of the big reasons for the Brexit vote. It was an anti-immigration, anti-foreigner vote, and unless businesses and, politicians start to say, hey guys, Britain's always been a country open to immigration, and when you cut off immigration, you cut off the oxygen that allows every one of our firms to try and make a bit of money by hiring qualified labour. With 300,000 European doctors, dentists and nurses quit because of Brexit. And now we've got the worst queues ever in the history of our health and service for treatment, and dental treatment is very hard to find. How you get out of that, I do not know. There isn't a consensus yet. It probably can't happen until well after the next election. But Boris got something done with his Brexit withdrawal, but he didn't make Britain richer, and Brexit isn't working, and nobody thinks it can be made to work.
Denis MacShane, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme today.
Thank you.
Time for focus.